and welcome back to Wounded on Sixes. Today we're going to be doing a very special video where I'm going to go over how I like to deploy my Tau army in a competitive game state. So right now I have the board set up for GW Layout 2, which is a layout I'm going to be playing in an upcoming tournament, so I've been doing a lot of practice with it. And I am going to be doing one of the deployments, which is Search and Destroy. Now, Search and Destroy is actually one of my favorite deployment types when you're running the Tau. Now, when I first started playing Tau, I used to not like Search and Destroy because I kind of felt like I was stuck in a corner and my opponent was very close to getting me. And, you know, I really wanted like the hammer and anvil type deployment so that my opponent is, you know, as far away from me as possible. Well, slowly but surely, I really started to enjoy the Search and Destroy, mostly because Tau have so many infiltrating units that we have the ability to stake out places in the board easily that our opponent can't. So the way I'm going to kind of go over this is I'm going to start with what my first or second drop would be, and then I'm going to kind of go over why I have the units where they are, where they're going to go turn 1, turn 2, and also I'm going to go over where I'm expecting my deep strike targets to come down. Again, we're not going to have any enemy units on here, so a lot of this is going to be some guesswork. A lot of it is just going to be here for examples, but I really wanted to take the opportunity to show you how I like to deploy. So as you can see, we have all of our units out on the board, and I am running an auxiliary cadre list here for this sample video here. And I do over here have my units in Deep Strike, 2 units of Crisis Suits, and a unit of Vespid. So let's get started on where I'm going to place my first deployment. So whether I'm deploying first or deploying second, the first thing I want to do, especially on this Search and Destroy mission, is to stake out my natural expansion. So this is going to be the objective that is closest or to the left flank of my deployment zone here. And the first unit I'm going to put down is a Ghost Keel Battlesuit. Now the Ghost Keel has Infiltrate, he has Stealth, he also has Lone Op. Now the reason I'm putting him out here is because I want to make sure that my opponent cannot get any units onto the objective. And I also want to ensure that the opponent is screened out from my deployment zone. So they're not here to kind of jail me into my own deployment zone over here, but they're also further enough away that they can't deploy on the objective. And since their deployment zone will start about here, they're going to have to come up close enough within 12 to be able to shoot at the Ghost Keel. So I want to try to use my Ghost Keels effectively, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself. The whole point of my auxiliary cadre list is to try to get my Kroot into the opponent's lines while my tower firing. But what I want to do is be able to protect my flank, and by doing that, I want to be able to put a Ghost Keel on my main objective. So usually if I'm going to be going first, this is where I'm going to be placing my first Ghost Keel, because I need to make sure that this objective marker is kind of screened out. Now I don't want to come up front here because I don't want to make it the easiest charge possible for my opponent coming out of their deployment zone. And I also don't want to have him up close enough that he can get a couple of units in this little zone here to be able to fire at him. I want them to have to come out of their hidey hole and expose themselves to shoot at this Ghost Keel. Behind the Ghost Keel, I'm going to always have a unit of Stealth Suits. Now the Stealth Suits also have Infiltrate, but I don't want to be very aggressive with them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them behind this ruin here. So they're going to be completely hidden because the first floor windows are closed. They're going to be completely hidden here. And then in my turn, we're just going to pop one of them up here. They'll still be in coherency because it's less than 5 inches. And now I can guide any unit, and I'm only exposing one of my Stealth Suits. So if they decide to attack my Stealth Suits and they kill this guy, they now can no longer see the rest of the unit. It's protected. And then the next turn, we can pop another one up and be able to continue. And this is how we keep our Stealth Suits alive longest and put them in positions where they're going to be able to do the guiding that we have them for. Being on this terrain piece and being able to look out to the entire board. So now any unit that's in the middle of the board can be guided by this unit of Stealth Suits. You'll notice I also have my other ghost keel here. Now this is kind of the plan of the Build a Night workshop. Now this one is going to be kind of hidden so that it can't be charged from our opponent's deployment zone, and most likely it's not going to be able to get shot at all because of lone op and because it's kind of hiding. We want all the shots to maybe go at one ghost keel, but not both, okay? That way, we're keeping our units alive longer, and we're using the what I like to call the Build a Night workshop to force our opponents to try to have to deal with this. It's going to be very difficult to take us off the objective with two ghost keels here and the rest of our army right here next to our deployment zone. So we're ensuring that the opponent can be fired at across the board from our ghost keels here and their cyclic ion rakes. They can be guided by the stealth suits. And they are in a pretty advantageous position where most of the things down on that side of the board are not going to be able to fire at them. So the only thing that's going to be able to get them is anything that comes down this thin corridor. A lot of times you're not going to be able to fit a big vehicle through here. They're going to have to come out through here or something like that. So it's going to be difficult for them to put the kind of firepower into these ghost kills that we need, which means we're going to get to hang on to this objective for a long time. Not to mention, if they do put a lot of stuff coming down this area toward our ghost keels, we have the rest of our army right here ready to pounce and ready to reinforce. Moving over to the other side of the board, I wanted you to kind of get a look at the other flank. So the way that I'm playing this here is if the ghost keel over there is my first drop, then my second drop is going to be these stealth suits right in this terrain piece. So the reason that is that it's going to, one, kind of prevent our opponent from getting, within 9 inches of our deployment zone. They're now going to have to be 9 inches of that stealth suit there. But also, rather than our opponent being able to charge a Riptide or maybe our rampagers here, he's going to have to charge into these stealth suits. Now, that's not ideal for us. We don't want the stealth suits all the way up here to make it an easy charge or easy for maybe one of its infiltrating units to attack the stealth suits. But we want to keep them, we want to put a little bit of a buffer zone between their part of the board and our deployment zone. I'm also always going to put a Riptide here on one of the corners or one of the flanks here. Because the Riptide is so good at kiting units, so it can fall back and shoot, it can stay in combat and shoot and not suffer a penalty to its hit roll. It's a great tank shock target. So depending on what my opponent's coming at me with on the flank, I can kind of use the Riptide as a blunt force to either, shoot and kill our opponents with shooting and tank shocks, but also I can use it to kite. I can stay in combat, have it attack me, shoot it, stay in combat again, or I can fall back, I can shoot, and then I can wait for them to get me again, basically delaying their action into my deployment zone. And that's really what a Riptide is fantastic at. It's really good at kiting the enemy unit. Now, it is not the most durable thing in the world, but that 4-up invul and 14 wounds will keep it alive for a good amount of time. So I always suggest putting that Riptide on the corner or on the flank so that it acts as almost like a moving wall to prevent your opponent from getting into your deployment zone. Now we're going to look at the rest of the deployment here. So we're running the auxiliary cadre. So to me, the 3 biggest units in this cadre are going to be my 3 units of rampagers. And the way we have them set out here is that 2 of them are fully covered in the cover, but 1 is right here exposed. And the reason for that is that if we get to go first, right, we get to make a 7-inch scout move, then make a 7-inch move, and now we're practically in our opponent's deployment zone with this unit of rampagers. So if we get to go first, this is going to be the rampager unit that we send up the board first. And again, we're going to try to send these rampagers out at our opponent 1 step at a time. So we're going to send 1 unit 1 round, another unit a 2nd round, and another unit a 3rd round. That way, whatever they plow into, they're going to give buffs to our Tau units when they're shooting at them. So we're going to get that extra AP, but we're also going to get all the extra detachment bonuses. And remember, when you're deploying your army, you want to think ahead to how am I going to use my deployment rules effectively. If you do not deploy properly, your detachment rules are not going to work for you. So this guy right here, his whole point is if we go first, he's going to move 14 inches, probably advance, and then we're going to use a strat to advance and charge, basically driving him up the board, and at the very least, blocking this area here, which means our opponent now cannot come through this area. So they have basically two routes out of their deployment zone. Over here, which is going to make it hard for them to get shots on anything, especially even down there in our ghost keel, or over here where they're going to have to deal with like two ghost keels and we have a ton of reinforcements we can bring back. So these guys being set up here for a turn one win on the roll means they're going to get up, they're going to block. If we won turn one here, these guys, rather than come up and expose themselves out here in the middle, we'd most likely bring them out for the scout and then move them up to here and kind of keep them in cover. Because, like I said, we don't want to waste all of our rampagers right away. So I'm going to kind of want to bring these guys out and stage them in cover. Coming over here, I'm going to want to do the same thing with this unit here. I'm going to want to scout them out, move them 7, maybe even advance them so I can kind of get them behind here, give them some cover, and hopefully set them up for a charge up here. So essentially what we're doing with our rampagers is we're going to use them to charge our enemy lines, but we're going to use it to charge the enemy in the spaces where they're going to be able to come out of their deployment zone. Again, it's kind of like a soft jail where we're trying to gum up the works so that our opponent can't move out to fire at us and we can get all set up with our Tau units right away. And that's why we want to try to protect these rampagers, because if they get caught out in the middle, they are absolutely useless. Moving along with the rest of the deployments, I'm going to keep my Skyray behind my main wall. And when it's time to move, I'm basically just going to kind of move him up here, maybe get him on the objective and allow him to shoot right up the center of the board or down here at anything coming at us. And this is going to be our heavy fire support from back here. But again, we're going to want to keep it back here to just keep it unexposed. I'm going to have my last unit of stealth suits here. And again, what we're going to do, like we did with every unit of stealth suits, is we're going to drop one guy up top so we can see out the top floor windows. And then he's going to be able to guide anyone coming out the middle. And we basically do the same thing here where one guy will drop out and he'll be able to guide anyone with that line of sight there. We have a unit of crew carnivores. We're going to start these guys on our main objective, and then we're going to kind of move them off. The reason why we're starting them here, even though we're kind of wasting their scout move, is they're going to use their field craft to sticky this, so that way if we do have to move off the objective, we'll still maintain it because of that sticky. The last unit of carnivores are going to be over here, and again, they're going to try to come out here and screen this part of the board here. Screen this so that our opponent has to go through the Kroot for this big opening here and can't basically crash our flank. For the broadsides, I like to call this configuration the ditzy broad. If you notice the way I have my broadsides is that I have them gun tip to body, gun tip to body. The reason that is that if you kind of leave them out cinematically in a competitive game, you'll notice that at this point, this unit's profile is way larger than it was previously. Now, if I turn them like this, now I have a much smaller profile on my broadsides, and I can kind of just keep that, move my 5 inches, and now rather than having my gun out and exposed, I have a much smaller footprint that I can get into tighter corners to see, and also make it harder for my opponent to get those chip shots from long range because they can see the tip of my gun. So the way I like to keep my ditzy broads, as I like to call it, is to have them in this configuration to lower their footprint on the map. We're gonna have an ethereal here. Depending on the mission, the ethereal might come out and I might use it as a guider. However, if I'm playing something where like linchpin, where I really need to hold my home objective, I'm most likely going to keep him like back here and unexposed, mostly to kind of screen out my backfield and just collect points. I'm willing to sacrifice that extra guiding unit to keep my back objective from getting taken, because you really don't want to get it taken on linchpin at all. But again, there's certain maps where the home objective, your primary objective, doesn't really count for points, you know, I'll feel much more free to actually probably start her a little bit out of, out in the field. So that way it's getting its guides. But again, we don't want it exposed. It's not going to be part of a unit. It's just going to be here to grab us more command points. And then finally, last but not least, we have a unit of crude hounds here. And you'll notice that the crude hounds are right next to the Riptide. That's for a couple of things. One, they're going to be an extra screen for the Riptide. So if we're moving the Riptide along the flank here, we can use the hounds to kind of screen him out. But the hounds are also going to be in that great proximity because of the guided fire strat, where we can up the strength on this burst cannon to strength 8, -2 damage. So that's kind of why the hounds are there. They move quick, and we're going to always deploy them next to the Riptide. The hounds and the Riptide will play nicely together. So that is where I'm going to deployments. Now let me show you where I'm going to drop all my deep strikes. Moving along with our scenario, I'm going to pretend that I got to go first and I got to move up turn 1. And now we're at the beginning of turn 2. So this is kind of where I expect to be. I have my ghost keels both arranged in the Build a Night Workshop configuration, where they're both going to be able to target and shoot at the same units or harass units from the other side of the board without taking any fire. We also are going to have the stealth suits. Like I said, one's popped up on this terrain, ready to guide anything that's in the middle of the board or coming up this flank here. We're going to have our carnivores, which scout moved and moved to make sure that they're kind of blocking out this little area and screening out our Tau from getting shot at. We also have our rampagers here, which scout moved, and then advanced, put themselves in cover. And they're going to try to drive up the side of the board here to probably try to stuff our opponent into their deployment zone and keep them from threatening our natural expansion here. I have my ditzy broads set up here again, configuring them in such a way that their profile is really small. We're basically going to keep moving them over till they can provide fire support, anything down the middle of the board there. My ethereal's back here. Let's say we're playing something like Linchpin. I'm going to always want to keep this guy in the back to kind of screen out. I don't want things deep striking behind me and taking my Linchpin objective. We're going to have the stealth suits here. Again, one's popped up to the top floor so they can look out and provide observations for anything up the middle of the board there. Skyray is going to move up, come through the terrain and kind of just sit on the objective and be able to provide heavy fire support up the middle or up this flank here. We had the carnivores. They started on this board to field the deployment zone to field craft it. Now they're going to move up and kind of block this area here. We have the Riptide with his crude hounds. The crude hounds are always going to kind of be in front to take on any charges from him and also be within proximity to give him the guided fire ability. We have our 1 units of stealth suits here underneath the building. As you can see, one guy is up here to perform observations. We have this unit of Crutox Rampagers. They came over here, they moved, they advanced, and now they're going to try to charge and stuff our opponent into this area here, keeping them from coming out here and gaining good fire lanes on the rest of our units there. Now, if we also have this last Rampager unit, again, if they got to go first, move up here. Now, if this unit was here round 2, it most likely would die. I'm just putting it here, for example, but if we got to go first with this unit, we would scout, move, advance, CP, charge, and get them right in here and do as much damage as we can, hopefully keeping 1 or 2 alive so that we can stuff our opponent here and they can't really come out to challenge us on this middle objective. Now for deep strikes, I'm going to want to drop my missile knives right on here. This way they can provide the most amount of fire support for everything in the middle. If I wasn't playing Search and Destroy, I like to kind of start these guys behind whatever this middle ruin is. This way I can just kind of jump them up and give them full view of everything here. And we can just provide a crap ton of firepower. And also, we are flanked by both of our carnivores. So if we need to, we can kind of push the carnivores up to keep these guys from getting charged. But yeah, these guys are great fire support and we want them in the middle of the board. Coming along here, depending on the secondary missions, this is an excellent place to drop your Vespid Stingwings. They're not exposed, they're out of the way, and they can score a bunch of stuff, especially here on the corners like containment or sabotage. We do not want to use these guys offensively. We want to drop them when it's convenient. I tend to not use rapid ingress on them. I tend to just kind of pick them up and drop them every turn, and that's where you want to use them. Last but not least, I do have a unit of star sights with a cold star commander. I am not gonna deep strike these guys. I'm gonna wanna look to rapid ingress them because they have the commander with the assault. We can drop them somewhere and run up and tag them. We get 18 inches with our burst cannons. And again, we can kind of use these guys where we need to. Most likely though, I'm gonna rapid ingress them probably somewhere around here so that way, beginning of turn 3, I can kind of run out and start to put pressure on their natural expansion. So that way they're kind of just spending the whole game fighting over this objective and leaving the middle and my natural expansion alone. So that is how I like to deploy. Again, this is only one deployment type. There's many. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd be happy to make more for different layouts or different armies. So if you have one of the armies on the channel you want to see me do a deployment and deep strike video for, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs. I think we're up to about 650. I want to thank everybody for their support. Thank everybody for the great comments. And thanks for coming back for more Wounded on Sixes.